Shalom family, we're going to talk about Joel 2. And in the last days, Yahuwah says, my sons and daughters will prophesy. That means that women like me and other women that Yahuwah put on assignment are supposed to speak during these last days, not just the men. So many men want to keep us quiet. It's because they're out of order. They're not following his Torah. They're not following his commandments. And they're carnal. They're the works of the flesh, as in Galatians 5:22 through 25. So we're going to talk about Joel. Because I think that a lot of these pastors and bishops, not only them, but mayors, governors, even husbands, even these men, they're so carnal. They can't keep control of their flesh. And it's running rapid. And we're seeing it all over the United States. In Joel 2:28 through 29. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit. Sons and daughters, prophecy is not limited by gender. Old and young is not limited by age. Servants and handmaids is not limited by social issues. This is echoed in Acts 2:17-18 when Kepha, Peter, said Joel's prophecy was beginning to unfold at Pentecost, but in fullness is for the last days. So why many men reject women who prophesy? Well, like I talked about before, it was carnality. Instead of discerning the spirit, they look at gender, title, or tradition, 1 Corinthians 2:14. Have you noticed that everybody, especially these melanated pastors, they got to be either a bishop, they got to be an apostle, they have to have some kind of title. And I know when I used to go to church, boy, if you was a pastor or a bishop or apostle, oh, you can't sit just in the back or just sit in regular places. They want to sit in the front and be seen. And I remember doing praise and worship as some of the biggest ministry, playing the music. And I would notice a lot of these pastors and bishops and apostles, they couldn't even stand and raise their hands and worship. They was too busy being on the phone. They was too busy sitting there and just looking around. How is a man of Yahuwah going to come out and preach the word or sit underneath the word and you can't even lift your hand and worship Yahuwah? And I get so tired of these minister music or these pastors saying, oh, come on, lift up your hands. Just give Yahuwah the glory. Just give God the glory. If you got to make the people lift up their hands and worship the Most High, that means that the presence of Yahuwah is not in the church. But I digress. So it's carnality. The second is control and pride. Many leaders want to maintain power, so they dismiss voices that challenge them, especially if Yahuwah sends correction through a woman. Fraternities and secret societies. You are right. Many pulpits are infiltrated with men tied to worldly fraternities and secret orders. See, they can't do certain things. You know, like remember when Marvin Sapp closed the doors and said everybody's got to give money that totals like $40,000 because they probably told him, hey, you need to get this amount of money in here, or we're going to come after you and expose you with something. Because you know they're doing stuff in the dark that's going to always come to light. Their loyalty is not to Yahuwah, but to their oaths, symbols, and pride. This blinds them spiritually. Twisting of Paul's words. The passage like 1 Timothy 2 and 12 are often misused out of context to silence women entirely, ignoring that Yahuwah himself raised up prophetess and leaders like Deborah, Huldah, Anna, and Miriam, and Daniela. So what happens when they reject Yahuwah's messengers? Well, Luke 10:16, it says, he that despises you despises me, and he that despises me despises him that sent me. But they mocked the messengers of Elohim and despised his words and misused his prophets until the wrath of Yahuwah rose against his people, till there was no remedy. 2 Chronicles 36:16. So when men refuse a word from Yahuwah, just because it comes through a woman, they are rejecting Yahuwah himself, not the vessel. So the reality in the last days, and we are in that, Yahuwah is deliberately breaking human pride by raising up unlikely vessels, including women, the poor, and even those outside church structures. He will not be boxed in by tradition. The remnant that listens will live. The carnal leaders who resist correction will drag their congregation into deception and destruction. And you know what's so sad is a lot of people in the congregation, they don't even read their Bible. They don't pray. They don't even come to church with a Bible or even a notebook, a pen to take notes. They just sit there blank stared. They don't worship in church. Let me tell you, I was a worship leader for over 20 years. And I love worship. I play the piano and I love worship. And do you know it was a struggle on Sunday mornings and on Wednesday nights just to get the people to be on time in church. Service starts at 10 o'clock. People would show up at 10:30. We're almost the praise and worship was over with. And a lot of people said they didn't like to come to praise and worship because they just wanted to hear the word. They didn't want to spend time in singing and lifting their hands and doing anything. So how in the heck do you want to be in the New Jerusalem if you can't worship the Most High? You can't humble yourself. You can't get before Yahuwah in his presence. But you want to be in the New Jerusalem? A lot of these people, I wouldn't step foot in these churches. I'm not saying all churches are like that, because all churches are not like that. But we worry so much about the other nations when Yahuwah sent his own son Yahusha for the lost sheep. The lost sheep were the ones that were stiff-necked, rebellious, worldly, lustful, into pagan gods. As we're seeing, they into transgender, homosexuality, lesbianism, pedophilia, just the likes. And back in his days, they rejected him and called him names and didn't accept him. So you know there's only going to be a remnant that's going to be taken and hidden. So in the last days, when he says my sons and daughters going to prophesy, ladies and gentlemen, the sons and daughters of Yahuwah, you stay on your assignment. You stay bold and you stay focused, because Yahuwah is with you.